Hey there. A quick reminder that All About Beer is back online. Visit allaboutbeer.com for news, reviews, and beer insight. And you can also follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at All About Beer to keep up with us every step of the way. And if you want to help bring original journalism to the beer space, we have a Patreon that goes directly to writers, photographers, illustrators, and editors, starting at just $5 a month. And there's also a pro tier for all of you professional brewers and industry businesses out there. Visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer to learn more. Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall. And there is some welcome news out of California this week when it was revealed that Moonlight Brewery, which had been half owned by Heineken/Lagunitas, would sell that part of the company to Patrick Rue, the former owner of the brewery. Patrick is here, along with Brian Hunt, the founder of Moonlight, to talk about the sale, ownership, and the customer experience. But first up, we're able to bring you this show each week thanks to the companies that want to support journalism in the beer space. And you can help us out too. Learn more by emailing sponsor@beeredge.com. Cigar City is a sponsor of this episode, and we're grateful for that. And Wayne Wombles is here. He's Cigar City's brewmaster, and we're talking about Fancy Papers, the brewery's hazy IPA. Wayne, welcome back to the show. And for those who are unfamiliar with the beer, can you tell us a little bit about it and what they can expect flavor and aroma-wise?
So with this beer, I get a lot of white grape and lime to lime leaf. There's also honeydew melon, and there's a citrus expression, but it's leaning more towards orange. And then also definite mango, sort of like underripe mango character.
Where does the name come from?
The name is in reference to designs and crests that were printed on fancy papers, which were applied to cigar boxes and cigar packaging. And all this basically is a nod towards Tampa's long tradition of hand rolling cigars. And when we talk about that, that is the reason why Tampa is referred to as the Cigar City, which is where Cigar City Brewing gets its name from.
That's great. And thank you, Wayne. We're going to have more with you at the bottom of the show. But for now, I'm going to encourage everybody to go visit cigarcitybrewing.com to learn more about Fancy Papers and all of the brewery's other beers. Don't forget to visit beeredge.com to sign up for the newsletter, to catch up with the Beer Edge podcast, and to check out our merch page, which is now up and running again and is full of This Week in Rauch Beer gear, as well as Defend Pilsner mugs. Also, the Craft Brewery Cookbook is on sale wherever you get your books. It's packed with recipes and stories from some of the best breweries in the country. And this cookbook has all of your beer and food pairing needs covered in fresh and inventive ways. It's published by Princeton Architectural Press, and get your copy today wherever books are sold. Last week, word got out that Patrick Rue, the founder of the brewery in Orange County, California, and more frequently the founder and operator of Erosion Wines in Napa, had acquired a 50% stake in Moonlight Brewery, the beloved Northern California brewery that was founded 30 years ago by Brian Hunt. Moonlight is known for its beers like Death and Taxes and Reality Check, and had been half owned by Lagunitas via Heineken for the last 6 years. I first learned of this news by Beer by Bart. It's a great site that's run by Gail Ann Williams and Steve Shapiro. And if you're not already following them on social media, rectify that quickly. A subsequent news release noted that Patrick will serve in an advisory capacity and will direct an oak barrel aging program that enhances the integrity and heritage of Moonlight. Under the Heineken co-ownership, Moonlight packaging shifted from exclusively to draft to additionally offering beer in cans, and both production and distribution have grown, all while keeping sales limited to Northern California. And additionally, that release stated that the new ownership strengthens Moonlight's dedication to remaining locally owned. This will allow for patient growth, greater availability of its coveted beers to its fans and wholesale partners, while managing the deliciousness and high quality for which Moonlight is so well known. That's nice for a press release, but let's hear from the owners directly. Both Patrick and Brian joined me via Zoom to go deeper into this news. Here's our conversation. Brian, was this an unexpected chapter for Moonlight?
No, not really. This is something that I've been working on for a while and trying to find the right long-term solution. And working with Patrick was a bit of a surprise, and it was serendipitous that he came along at a good time.
How so?
Because I think he's an excellent partner for what we do. He understands the craft beer. He loves craft beer, and it's not. Some of the people that I had talked to were looking at this more of a financial transaction, and it's the love of beer that I think is what we at Moonlight is really what we're focused on, and Patrick is that way. That's how he feels about beer. Beer is delight. Beer is poetry. Beer is an art form, and that's what Patrick brings to the table. That more of this same philosophy, and in that regard, it's serendipitous that he showed up at a time when we were looking for the right partner.
Do you feel that saying beer is the delight, beer is an art form, is that something that doesn't get the focus that it deserves these days?
I'm not sure that it ever has gotten enough focus. But then again, that's not always what people want in a beer. Sometimes people just want flat out refreshment, and I'm no alternative to that. There are times when I was handed a Coors Light, and you know what? It worked.
Yeah.
So it's not always that something has to just stop you in your tracks. I really like it when something does, but as the industry progresses, it's, I think, harder for that to be what people are focusing on. It's more business related, and luckily, some people are doing a beautiful job of bringing artistry into brewing. But not everybody is the focus these days. Kind of once you see money get into that there's money to be made, then that philosophy comes in. I was actually really grateful when people started weed operations, because then when someone just inherited a bunch of money, they said, "Dude, man, I'm going to have a dispensary." And they stopped opening breweries when they shouldn't.
I feel like that's maybe not a uniquely California problem, but largely a California problem.
Not sure how to answer
maybe.
that, but yeah.
I don't know. It just became legal in
others.
Jersey, so I don't have a full handle on the scene here yet.
Okay.
Heineken, it's been interesting because when larger breweries have come into the craft space, there's always a little bit of hand-wringing that happens among brewery owners, beer enthusiasts. What's going to change? How is it going to change? It's just not the same anymore. That kind of thing. With Moonlight, it was interesting because it was the deal through Lagunitas for half, and I think the natural assumption that industry watchers have is, okay, they're going to start there, and then they'll get the rest of it. What I think brought a smile to a lot of people's faces was Patrick coming into the equation, and Heineken / Lagunitas exiting. And it's not that people were smiling at their misfortune, but it was going to, okay, this is going to be owned by people that we know, and like physical, human beings, as opposed to large corporations. Could it have gone the other way?
Could have. And, you bring up a point that a lot of people, when they see a smaller craft brewery get bought by a larger, that they think automatically it's bad. And I take fault with that, because it's not that inherently it is bad. It's that what we know usually happens is bad, or is bad for someone that cares about it in a smaller way. You have some craft breweries that made it to a larger audience, and some people are really happy that they finally can get something in their state. But what matters most is what happens in that small brewery. Is the care still there? Do people actually want to make great beer, or are they just wanting to make great money?
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to happen. It just very often does. And so that instead of looking at the problem being, oh my gosh, some bigger brewery bought out another one, yeah, often that seems to go a direction. But really what to look at is not that. What's really to look at is what happens with the beer. And I've seen craft breweries bought by larger that do a great job. And I've seen, obviously, the opposite, too.
Can you point to, and Patrick, I know you're here and you're just politely sitting in the background.
Okay, I don't like to talk anyway, so it's perfect.
Sorry, I've had too much coffee, I guess.
No, that what has been some of the good signs that you've seen in the past? I know it's easy to focus on the negative, but like what have been some of the benefits that you saw with some of those sales in the past, as somebody who is, had more than a toe in those waters?
Sure. Well, I think probably the biggest thing is just, as Brian said, a reach to the larger market. It's exposing people to the taste of craft beer. You can find really nice IPAs, any sort of sporting good or any sort of sporting event, any sort of concert venue. It's not the typical, lowest common denominator sort of beer everywhere. Now you have, real craft beer, at least the flavor of craft beer, however you wanted to define it, at these places where, civilization enjoys beer. So I think it's good for the rest of us in that everybody knows what an IPA is. Everybody knows, what a Pilsner is, that kind of thing. So just exposing people to good beer.
Is that what you wanted for Moonlight, Brian? To be in every stadium and every gas station and stovepipe cans and...
No, it never was. Actually, Patrick triggered something for me that I wanted to bring up, and really is another half of what I was saying earlier, was that it's not just the size of the brewery that makes a difference, that owns it. Because I know many craft breweries that are really only doing it for money, and the beer's not great, and the attitude of the ownership's not great, and their behavior is no different than what we don't like when a much larger brewery butchers something smaller. So to me, it's not the size of the ownership of the brewery, it's the behavior of the ownership of the brewery that makes the difference.
Interesting.
Large or small. I mean, we can all point to a craft beer that does things on a small scale, but there's a lot we don't really think is the way we would do it.
Yeah. Throughout
I'm
Moonlight,
sorry that I missed your question.
No. I don't know if you did. I guess, no, I think you answered it. I guess it comes down to how hard the thumb on the scale is from larger ownership. And I mean, ultimately how it squares with founders of, and original owners of, or owners of a brewery. Because we've seen larger breweries come in and founders and original owners sticking around, and watching the place that they built, that they hold more dear than just about anything else in life, change around them and have no say in it, which is frustrating in its own way. And sometimes it's for the benefit, and sometimes it's clearly not. With a 50% ownership, I mean, it seemed like you had the ability to keep things going the way that you wanted to, but with additional resources and insight from a larger company.
To a large degree, that's true. I got to continue running it, and kind of Lagunitas and I both had veto powers over things that we didn't want to happen, and there were great things about that in that regard, and challenges too, of course, like any relationship. And I think a lot about. You mentioned founders, and then things change. It's kind of like having kids, where you set your kid up for how you think their success is going to be, but that doesn't mean that they don't have their own way of wanting to take on the world, and they're going to do their own things, and a brewery will have its own life. And really, it's the consumers that own the brewery. It's not something that the owners get to dictate. It's the consumers that dictate what happens in a brewery. They buy the beer. They don't buy the beer. They buy the IPA and not the Pilsner. They buy the Pilsner and not the IPA. Breweries are going to have a life of their own regardless of what the founders sometimes want. The founders can steer, just like a parent can still steer an adult child some direction or other, but most children won't have their own agendas.
When the conversation started between the two of you, I imagine that there had to have been some pretty candid back and forths of expectations from both sides.
I don't know. We haven't had that discussion yet, have we, Brian?
Well, welcome to therapy.
We've known each other for a while, so that helps.
Yeah. I think we're aligned on the size and. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I first met you multiple years ago before you started the brewery, but on the CCBA board, I worked with you, and I think we each understood each other pretty well.
CCBA is California Craft Brewers Association. Yeah.
Oh, yep. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. Just for those on the East Coast. That's all. So entering into a relationship like this, though, even if you haven't had the, who's getting the top bunk question or conversation, there had to have been a decent understanding of long-term, or maybe not, of, what Moonlight continues to be and aspires to be.
Yeah. My goal in all this is to keep Moonlight what it is. It's, a brewery that's been near and dear to me for almost 20 years. It's celebrates 30th year anniversary. So I wasn't the first fan of it, but, it's a special brewery in that, in many ways, but it has really remained committed to making the beers that it does. It's, it's so easy these days to gain audience by making things that, people are asking for, like hazy IPAs and the like. And it's really kept true to its roots. It has a lot of integrity to me, and I don't want to screw that up. I want to help it out business wise, and it's already a really well performing business. But so I feel lucky to be part of it.
But Patrick, there's a lot of folks who, would hear about a brewery like this and have fond memories, and then just sort of shrug and say, well, what can you do? And kind of move on and have it live in a happy place in the memory banks. What was it about Moonlight that made you want to step up and do this?
Well, I live not too far away, so it's important.
So location.
But I have breweries.
It's a short commute. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope it's more than that. If it's not, that's fine. But
yeah, like I'm generally not looking for, to invest in breweries. I've been there. I have my own little 3.5 barrel brewery, so I get to, screw around and do what I want to do in the brewing world. It was just something that I felt very compelled to do.
I think, being stuck at home during the pandemic and drinking all those Moonlight cans really helped too. So thank you for that, Brian.
But is that, I mean, it sounds like you're being flipped, but I also imagine that there's got to be that's a very Fritz Maytag story, right? Of Fritz going to his local back in the 60s, drinking steam beer, being fond of it, finding out that it, was in peril and stepping up. Like it sounds flip, like, oh, I'm drinking a lot of this beer during the pandemic. Let me get a piece of this brewery. But
yeah,
there's history in that premise.
Well, it definitely wasn't in peril. It just didn't. I wanted to control the future, like Brian and I wanted to see it. Basically, if that makes sense. Could have gone a lot of different directions, and I wanted it to go my direction, which I feel like is Brian's direction as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like your analogy with Fritz Maytag in many ways, that it was a beer that Fritz loved and related and appreciated to, talking about Anchor Steam. And I think that's what I hear from Patrick, is it's something that he loves and appreciates. And like anything we do, we want more of that in our life. We don't want to see it go a different direction. And I think it's more like that. And to an earlier question, how much conversation we had about it. When I first had conversations about Patrick, it was he loved the beer, and he didn't say, God, Brian, you're only in Northern California. God, don't you think we could get in a lot of states if we did something different? He never asked me that question. So that kind of answered it all for me.
I like that. Patrick, you mentioned that you still have, your 3.5 barrel brewery attached to your natural wine company. Do you plan on it being different? Are they going to complement each other? These two brewing ventures, are they? How does that work, like portfolio wise?
Yeah, kind of totally separate businesses. However, as part of Erosion, we have a tap room and have a lot of other beers on tap. And Moonlight will, play a strong role in offering those great beers. But no, I feel like Erosion is there's kind of two focuses on our beers. One is, what do you want to drink after you've been drinking red wine all day long? We're in kind of this wine tourism area.
Yeah.
People tend to drink all day, and then they look for that beer that is going to, refresh them and get all that red wine off their teeth. And then, secondly, I think is making beers that I'm known for, which tend to be a little bit more experimental, or, I don't know, not so super stylistic, and just kind of fun, delicious beers. So do those as well, and more catering to a I don't know, kind of my core audience of beer enthusiasts that are generally in California, because that's where we can ship to. So
yeah,
where I see Moonlight as keeping doing what it's currently doing, plus a few small modifications to get more of that direct to customer sort of focus.
Is there a different beer drinking audience in your part of the state as opposed to Orange County?
Yeah, definitely. So I think in Orange County we were able to attract a really wide demographic, and able to find those people who enjoy drinking 20% beers, on a 90-degree day in August. Where up here in Napa,
Brian's laughing. We're coming back to that in a second. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big area. There's 15 million people within a pretty quick drive, and it's easy to find, or it's easier to find your audience. But when you're in Napa, you're very far from everybody. So people are there for a reason. Usually it's they're visiting and drinking wine. They're generally not beer. I think they're people more and more are educated about beer, but they're not looking for a huge barley wine.
Yeah.
So it's so I see I need to reach beyond this local area through shipping to kind of reach the people I need to reach, all the while, serving this local area with our wine and with like Reality Check, like Moonlight beers, that fits the wine drinking crowd really well.
Is there a deeper synergy between modern winemaking and craft beer?
Ooh, I don't know. I would say the Napa of the 90s was all about making kind of the biggest, boldest wines, the most ripe fruit flavor that you can get. And now I feel like it's more back, and I feel like that was similar to the craft beer ethos of 2010. Let's make the biggest beers we can make. Let's put it in bourbon barrels. Let's smooth out the alcohol, but big flavor. Which so I feel like there's some similarity there, where I think wine and Napa is going more towards now, like, how can we be on the same playing field as Bordeaux? We want to have refined wines that are going to age for 50 years. And, it's sort of a slightly different mentality these days. So we're of the 1990s Napa. We want to make big wines that, drink like imperial stouts. So we're a little bit against the trend, but it's fun.
More in just a moment, but first, thanks to Cigar City Brewing for sponsoring this episode. Check out Fancy Papers from Cigar City Brewing. With aromas of freshly cut grass and tangerine, along with white wine grape and bread-like aromas, this hazy IPA has flavors of guava, melon, and lime leaf. Brewed with Strata, Sabro, and Idaho 7 hops to draw in lovers of fruit-forward hazy IPAs, get some today where you buy beer, and learn more at cigarcitybrewing.com. And now, back to the conversation. And Brian, earlier you mentioned that consumers own the breweries when it comes to choice and what they want in their glass and their cans and their draft and everything else. How much does the ownership that they don't see play into consumer preferences, like in reality?
Interesting question. Well, I think how it manifests is the best way. The intentions of the owner come out in the product. It's interesting. I was giving a tour of Moonlight to someone a couple months back, and I said, "There's nothing we do here that is at all special. There's no secret at Moonlight that makes what we do. It's really that every time there was a business decision, I would always choose the option that would make the best beer." And you'll see that if a brewery is owned by a brewer, or if it's owned by a marketing person or owned by an accountant, everybody uses the skills they have, the knowledge, the background to manifest what they do. And I'm trained brewers, so that's what I want to see the focus of. So when we're buying a new pump, I want the one that's gentlest on the beer, not the cheapest one. Something like that, business decision. So you just add all those little decisions up. Do you have some money to put in? Do you put it into a bigger display for merch in the tap room, or do you put it into contracting some better hops, some exotic hops that you have one little window to get? It's that kind of decision that you have to make every day, from minutely small to very large decisions. And it's the summation of that. That is what you do. That is what people taste. Now, granted, you can also have advertisements with babes in bikinis, and that is what, that's the marketing person's in charge. And that resonates with certain people, and they'll buy the beer because of that. And I never really gave a whatever I can say on a podcast about
you can use the words.
The
That's
marketing.
Fine.
I think it probably just came across.
Yeah, we get it.
Marketing was never what I cared about. I would always put any money into the brewing process instead of into more radio ads or billboards or free giveaway T-shirts and glassware that some breweries do. That was just never my focus. And my feeling is the people that cared about the beer and that weren't dissuaded by free swag or whatever advertisements, the people that taste the beer went, oh my God, this is just damn.
Yeah.
That was my intention. And those are the consumers that I wanted to pay attention. A billboard or a free shirt that gets some people's attention. That's not what I wanted. And so I really did screw myself in some way that if we did anything wrong, our core clientele would go, it's not it anymore. So really, our clientele now are especially people that taste it and go, oh, God, this is exactly what I needed in my glass. This is the reality check I needed today. And so those people make the decisions to buy our beer or not. And so those people own the brewery because they're the ones that provide the capital for us to buy more malt and to pay the rent.
There also comes...
So,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please.
I rambled. That's probably plenty. So that's how the feelings of the owner manifest, and how in reality it is the consumers that also are the owners, and their choices manifest what happens in a brewery.
Everything that you just said, and I mean, Patrick, I imagine this is also true for you with erosion and going smaller than what you were before. It's living within the means that you feel comfortable as opposed to the means that the outside thinks that you should be. For a long time, even as a reporter, I was falling into the trap of saying, well, how big do you want to be? And I was missing the point of the overall industry by just assuming that people wanted to be the next Sierra Nevada or Sam Adams or whatever, whereas people are just happy by and large being within their footprint, what is manageable for them, but ultimately where they can have the most connection with their consumers. And I'm wondering if this new partnership fits into that there is, growth if you want it, but ultimately being comfortable in your own skin and how much that matters.
Right. Yeah. I think with erosion, it's, purposefully small and don't really want to see it become something significant. It's more of it's a professional hobby. So, which I think is really cool. I get to be a home brewer again, but people still get to drink it. So I like that. But I feel like working with Moonlight, I'm able to, use some of the skills I've developed in building a brewery to, apply there. And if that makes sense.
Do you wake up a little happier being a home brewer who can sell the beer that he wants?
Yeah. Definitely.
Or do you wake up, maybe not happier, but in a different way?
I mean, the days I get to brew and I don't have a recipe, I have 5 different types of malt and I have these hops and I have this yeast and I kind of figure it out, about 10 minutes before I start milling. That's really fun. That's something you cannot do normally. And, but
how much chocolate syrup do you have on hand right now?
I have a lot of cacao nibs.
Sorry,
I do have like cans and cans of dulce de leche.
Sorry, that was an asshole question, but I just couldn't resist.
Totally,
yeah, it's fair. Totally. It was a fair question. It was just still an asshole question. Yeah.
I do have a lot of weird ingredients, but I also make ice cream. So I don't know whether it's going to
Like
go
professionally or just
cream.
for fun?
Professionally. I don't know. We'll
Really?
make, 20 gallons a day kind of thing when we make ice cream that we serve at our tap room. Yeah. It's really fun.
Brian, what I know about your brewery, and having only visited once years ago, do some of the things that Patrick made his name brewing with, do some of those ingredients freak you out?
Freak me out, boy. That could be taken different ways. They startle me and surprise me for sure. But then again, I brew with herbs and redwood branches, and who am I to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. Who am I to say?
Yeah. So
it
Brian,
does show a willingness to be creative and to think outside the keg, and I welcome that. There's so much more that beer can be, more than what it's been, and I don't know the next beer I'm going to have that will absolutely stop me in my tracks and go, I had no idea. This is amazing. That's it. I love that we can have with beer, and just to be stopped and stunned. So bring it on.
So where does Moonlight go from here?
Well, we're going to.
Is that a question for?
It's a jump ball. I mean, you each have an equal opportunity to answer.
All right. Well, Brian, I interrupted Brian talking, so you go first, please.
Oh, well. What I really bring to the table is more continuation of what we do, and with some fun things. And I think Patrick has some ideas for what will be different going forward, and probably should hand it over to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think Moonlight is a incredibly valuable place. It is so. First and foremost, protecting that is my biggest goal, and it's also in very high demand amongst its very small footprint of distribution.
Yeah.
So getting more beer to the people who are already drinking it, I think, is important. And then getting more people to enjoy the brand in person, in the tap room, already has a great audience. But I think that's how you get to really become a lifelong fan, is experiencing it in person. And I know the first time I visited Moonlight was when Brian was in a barn off the side of his house. I think it was your house. Was it, Brian? Yep. And that, I mean, I'll never forget that visit, and drinking beers while he was brewing a batch of beer. And so if we can deliver those sort of experiences to people every week, I think it'll be very fulfilling, and Moonlight will have a great future, as it already does.
It's nice to hear. I've been asking folks on the show, and Brian, I'm going to start with you, but the premise is, months back, my wife and I were rewatching The Good Place, the television show, and there's a whole premise in the last season of being able to walk through a green door that will bring you anywhere at any point in time, with anybody that you want to be with. And so if there was a door on this plane of existence, and this conversation could end, and you could walk through it and be at any pub or any brewery with anybody that you wanted, where would you go? Who would you be with? And what would you want in your glass?
Oh boy, that's quite a lot. My lovely wife is definitely who I'd want to be with. just at Hair of the Dog, and that was pretty wonderful. I'm kind of a in the moment sort of person, and I think wherever I am, I can make it pretty good, especially if there's, good beer. I don't have big dreams for that. I
Okay.
just kind of pretty too grounded to give you a better answer. That I'm terribly sorry.
No, that's fine. Patrick, do you have a more lofty answer?
Boy, I think if I could be in a bar with Michael Jackson, the beer writer, before anybody knew about him, when he was trying to convince people to drink like a Flemish red.
So early Jackson. I like that.
Right, exactly.
People who have brought up Jackson before are like late Jackson, who has all of the answers. You want early Jackson. I dig that.
Yeah, I want to be. I don't. I want to see what those conversations would be like, and how he convinced millions of people to classic styles of beer. How did that start?
Yeah,
I'd love to see that.
I love it. Well, gentlemen, I'm excited for this new chapter of Moonlight, and I'm honored that you took some time to come on the show so close to the announcement to share a little bit of the insight to it and the future and the past and everything that's intertwined. So thank you for being on the show this week, and thanks for sharing your insight.
Thanks so much, John.
Well, thanks for having us, and best luck with All About Beer.
Nice. Nice.
There's a lot of good things we can look forward to being better in the world. There's a lot of things that get really crappier in the world, and there's no reason not to also look for the things that are good in this world. And there's some things that, we have to look forward to.
That's a nice reminder. Thank you. Okay, don't forget, All About Beer is back online. Go to allaboutbeer.com to catch up with great content. And if you want to keep in touch with me, if you have questions and comments, you can always email me. It's John Hall, that's JOHNHOLL @beeredge.com, or you can get with me on Twitter at John_Hall. Go check out beeredge.com for our This Week in Rauk Beer and Defend Pilsner merch, and follow along on social media at The Beer Edge. Of course, This Week in Rauk Beer is also online. The Facebook group is easy to search, and on Twitter and Instagram, it's at TW Rauk Beer. We're able to bring you the show each week thanks to the companies that want to support independent journalism in the beer space. If you'd like to learn more about our surprisingly affordable rates, please reach out to sponsor at beeredge.com. As promised, I'm back with Wayne Wombles. He's the brewmaster of Cigar City, and the brewery is a sponsor of this episode, and we're thankful for that. And Wayne, we're talking Fancy Papers, the hazy IPA from the brewery, and hops obviously play a big part in this style. So what combination did you settle on, and what do you think they bring to the finished beer, both in aroma and flavor?
Well, this beer uses Strata, Sabro, and Idaho 7 as the primary hop varieties. Strata is one of my favorite newer hop varieties, I'll say. And I get a lot of honeydew and citrus. There's also some distinct pear notes, green pear that it has. There's also like a non-vegetal, non-grassy green tea sort of character that I get from this variety. And as far as Sabro is concerned, this one brings more of like coconut lime with even like a oaky woodiness. And then with Idaho 7, you're going to expect pineapple, a little bit of grassiness, and almost like a pina colada expression. And when all those things come together, they create that tropical expression that you would expect from Fancy Papers.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Wayne. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. And now I'm going to encourage everybody to go and visit cigarcitybrewing.com to learn more about Fancy Papers and all of the brewery's other beers.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Also, shameless self-promotion, my new book, The Craft Brewery Cookbook, is now on sale wherever you get your books. Packed with recipes and stories from some of the best breweries in the country, this cookbook has all of your beer and food pairing needs covered in fresh and inventive ways. It's published by Princeton Architectural Press, and get your copy today wherever books are sold. Final reminder, check out the Beer Edge podcast with Andy Crouch. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And again, don't forget to go visit allaboutbeer.com and follow along on social media. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.